So we are here for episode 31 of the End Product Podcast, and we are recording this fresh off the back of the biggest announcement we've probably really ever had, I guess, in Sorare. And this week, me and Stishy Boy are joined by another super sub. He is everyone's favourite whale. He is the Scottish whale himself. It's McBrideAce. McBride, thanks for joining us, my man.
No problem. Big day. Hope you're both well.
Thanks very much for joining us at the last minute super sub. And Stishy, how are you, man?
Good. I'm cold. It is freezing down here. I don't know. It's probably even worse where you boys are. But yeah, we're at -2 in Croydon right now, so we're not quite on the Scottish level.
Yeah, it's a totally different level. I think with the announcement that we've had today, you know, like I was doing a live stream earlier on, doing a kind of live reaction to it, and one of the things I really enjoy about doing that is the live chat. A lot of people kind of coming back and giving me their perspective on, you know, where it sits for them in terms of what they think is good and bad about the announcements. And, you know, McBride, you're definitely known around like all the kind of Sorare circles as being quite direct and quite, you know, level-headed around kind of most things, you know, in terms of developments, but whether it be being too excited or too negative, both kind of either way. I'm really interested to hear, like, what, you know, when you read the announcement, what was your gut reaction? What was your first take home from it?
I was surprised that Limited was included. I was really happy Super Rare was included because I thought that the market there was just going to pot. Like Super Rare selling for same price as rares and stuff, and that's just not right at all. People think, well, what's that got to do with rares or what's got to do with limited? But if guys don't want to play there, they drop down, that can have an effect as well. I like the cap mode, so didn't think of it initially, but obviously with specialists you needed an under 40 player, whereas now if you get a guy that's averaging 42 or whatever, you can slot somebody else in, whereas game weeks before you're trying to play specialist and you got a guy that's 41 and that's just a huge annoyance. So it's like, you know, I could have put a team in but didn't have an under 40 or whatever. And obviously in Super Rare that's really, really hard because you're just going to decide to go out and buy a Super Rare for one game week or whatever. That's obviously sometimes they're not available or you know, obviously more money. Thought it was a really good decision overall in terms of people have been told the threshold might go obviously in December, or it was only guaranteed until December. It was good that the thresholds have been kept and it's been spread amongst all the scarcities, but it's not quite as easy to win it. And the 205 level was just, you know, it's nice if they want to give out crypto for that, but I think in a lot of ways it was holding things back. It doesn't encourage you to trade in any way. You can get guys just kind of roll them out, expect to win something every week, and I just don't think that was like good for the platform overall in terms of competition or just in terms of people wanting to actually move up or whatever. It'd be better just to sit with 5 or 6 cards and just turn over a small amount every week rather than thinking, why don't I buy some better cards or why don't I move to another scarcity or whatever. So I think that's all really good. And then I was thinking about it later as well. I've actually had some offers in Super Rares and stuff, which is like, you know, sometimes like some of them are really like hard to shift. So like the problem with Super Rare division is you maybe win a tier 3 and it's not worth much, but also it's really like you can't get it sold. Whereas if you win a tier 3 plus you get $100, well, that's good because you're filtering a bit of crypto into the platform and people largely will respend that. I've respent a lot of the F that I win in the threshold. Sometimes it goes in limited, sometimes it goes in something else, sometimes it adds into the pot. But if you're winning $100 or whatever, you could have guys there who are saying, oh, maybe I'll play a fun limited team or I'm going to fire that in with something else. So I just thought, overall, I thought it was really good. I think there was some people that might feel as if it affects their gallery if they're specifically in that rare range where they were just targeting the threshold every week and they couldn't really get much higher, but I think it's an overall point. It's a really good step in the right direction.
I would agree. What about you, Stishy Boy? What was your kind of take home or gut reaction?
Do you know what? I think like I put my like content creator hat on a little bit when it was going on, so I thought let me just film a reaction to it. I haven't done anything in terms of posting it yet, but if I watched that back, I was reading it. I think the pessimist in me was like, this is going to be an announcement that tells you that they're going to be phasing out the ETH thresholds, but we're going to get something else that might like maybe like, you know, like add a bit of silver lining to the situation. So as I was reading on, I'm like, this is quite good. Okay, when's the bad bit coming? And, like for me, as someone who doesn't really compete in the unique divisions, I don't think there really was anything that bad for me. It was just like, here's another opportunity to scrape a bit of ETH, maybe with limiteds, albeit it's quite a small amount, but it all helps. And you could put a team together for that limited division for like you could almost put them together for next to nothing if you, barring maybe a goalkeeper who you can pick goalkeepers up in limited for like 20-30 quid now quite easily, or less if you can be a bit shrewd. But yeah, I mean, I think that is a very positive move for limited players. I play limited, but I don't really target it. I don't have like the cards to really win. It's a bit of a lottery almost. It's like chuck a team in, see if we win a card. So with this opportunity, I think that in the limited divisions, I'll probably target that. That'll be my main limited team, just to try and keep bringing a bit of ETH in and potentially some cards. Because I do think I've got a fair few. I'm just looking at my gallery now because I've got 73 limiteds, which I think is a decent amount to have that option. Like when you play basketball, I think like you want as many options as possible to make sure that like you can get a good team, or a team that's expected to have a good result in the game week under that cap. So like a player that might overperform their L10. And bringing that into football, I feel like I've definitely got a lot of cards, definitely in limited and also in super rare, where I've won like tier 2, tier 3 supers that no one wants to buy. They're just sat in my gallery doing next to nothing every weekend. So I'm quite excited at the prospect of winning a nice amount of ETH as well every week, potentially in that super rare category, hopefully without watering down my attempts in the main sort of categories as well. So I thought it was good. And, I think some of the maybe potential negative takeaways from it are no underdog, no specialist, but I feel like this is a better option than those two. The only thing is, underdog, you didn't need the goalkeeper. So there isn't actually an option now. There won't be an option where you can play a common goalkeeper in any division. Now, that's it, right? That, as far as I'm aware,
Yeah.
You're only playing with commons if you're playing free to play. There's no use for them anywhere else now. But I do think that's a good thing for the platform, and I think that like where the price point of entry is now, it's not as silly as it used to be. It might get back to that, but I think like if you wanted to come in and play limiteds, even buying a goalkeeper, it's not an astronomical like entry fee. Now you can spend 40-50 quid and get a team of 5 together that might scrape $5 to $10 over the course of a couple of weeks. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's good. And I think it promotes progression. As McBride was saying, I think the super rare market's been a little bit stiff, been hard to shift those tier 2s, tier 3s that you pick up. But now, there's a decent amount of money there to scrape in ETH terms every week if you have a bit of options, a bit of choice. And I feel like for me, I was made up because I've got a lot of choice at the moment. I've got a lot of those kind of 40 to 50 scorers. And if my maths is correct, you roughly, like 48 per person is kind of like the base
sweet spot.
rate. And so, yeah, 48, I'm looking now, I've got a lot of players in that kind of 46, 48, 42 over the last 15. I'm assuming that's their L15s I'm seeing as by default now. Oh, no, it's still L5s, but, I've got a lot of cards that I can use in that. And again, to touch on McBride's point, this is a little bit more flexible than like the old specialist where you need the under 40 average. And like, you might only have one to choose from. But with this, it's like, if you've got a lot that are around about that 40 mark, but maybe a little bit over it, a little bit under it, whatever, you can be quite malleable with your selection. So I'm excited. I'm looking forward to that 30th of Jan. For the first game week. Be interesting to see what kind of fixtures I've got there, and yeah, I'll be really intrigued. I wonder, actually, both of you, do you see yourselves targeting this? I think like if you're similar to me and you've got a fair few super rares, a lot of mine just go into training, but I do enter a couple of D2 teams most weeks. Are you going to target this, or do you think this might just be like what you do with what's left of your supers and maybe uniques or whatever you play, like with your rares? Or do you see yourself going to this and being like, this is my main team, make sure I get the ETH and hopefully a card, and then put your pieces in your all-star, your under 23, your regionals.
I think it'll go up a bit in terms of priority. Like usually, I like to target the All Star because obviously got like tier one, but some weeks, big weeks, you've got a Star Super up top. So I always like to kind of target that, even though there was never any sort of threshold there. I think sometimes, like obviously, I've got sort of leftover guys and stuff, so they were getting into the underdog type tournaments anyway, or maybe the specialist super rare and stuff. So I think I'll probably still be able to kind of prioritize some of the pros, but then still put a good team into it as well. And at our point, I never mentioned earlier is I think it's quite clever what they've done overall, but without having any XP means that you also bring in a bit of value for the older cards. So you all the cards are the same, plus they are going to be rewarding cards in this division. It's not just a division where you've got to hit the threshold, you can also win cards. So what's going to happen is people are not going to enter the rare all-star as much. There's going to be less entrants in there. People are going to move their teams over into this division, but you can also win obviously limited or rare or super rares in this division. So we'll see how they actually are, but you've got a chance of winning two things in this division. You've got obviously winning the threshold if you get to that high score but don't quite achieve anything, and then you've got the cards above it. I think it's actually pretty clever what they've done. I don't think they'll pay out as much, probably less than half, if not more than that, than what they're actually paying out just now for all the kind of average A scores. But it's been spread out, and we're in a climate where they're dropping bits of crypto into all the different parts of the platform. So it's like coming back in, and most people will respend it. So it's creating some activity in terms of having to maybe trade to get a team that's available, but also just people getting wee bits of money here or there, which gives them the thought that they're winning, or some money to spend in something. Say you win a tenner or whatever, so I want a guy it's 20 quid, I'll put in a tenner and I'll buy that guy at 20 quid, or I'll just wait till next week and I'll win it, and then that money's been spent on somebody else's card, and then it just kind of goes through the system. So I think it is pretty clever what they've done overall. They always get a lot of kick-ins from everybody, and we give them a kick-in and stuff at times as well. But when you look at it, it's like it seems really pretty well thought out.
Yeah. I think for me, the last kind of detail I need to know before I can know what I'm now going to prioritize is where are like uniques going to be won for super rares, because I have been prioritizing specialist super rare for the last like 3 or 4 months trying to win a unique. And I was actually, when that kind of occurred to me, when you asked me the question, Stish, I had a wee look through, right? So, and again, specialist, my L15 totals are maybe above 240 points, right? But out of the last 4 game weeks where I tried to play it, and bearing in mind you're kind of forced into doing the whole L15 under 40, you have to find somebody like that. And super rares, there's also less people. You're forced to take more risks with your cards, etc. 3 out of the 4 game weeks, I had a DNP in them. And on all 4 game weeks with my guys, I scored 180 to 195 points with a DNP 3 times out of 4. And on the 4th time when I didn't have a DNP, Craig Gordon got 10 points because he conceded a penalty or gave away, did something horrible. So he was as good as a DNP in essence. So, and that was with the 2 L15 under 40s, of course, and whatever the old specialist rules are. So I think so. Basically, I've been prioritising a division that I think is going to look quite similar to this, and I reckon like take out the DNP factor and put our guy scores in there. You're right in amongst fighting for points there. But what I'm interested in for my cards as well, when I'm picking, what team am I going to put my Celtic super rares into, or what team am I going to put my unique McGregor into, the really big cards I've got in my gallery, is I want to be winning unique still. That's part of the thing that I want to be doing with these guys. I also want to be maybe winning some champion Euro card. I want to be winning different things. So with these cards that I already have, what I prioritise going forward, I think we need the last detail, which I don't know when we'll get that, maybe at the turn of the year when they do the kind of, the next month ahead or whatever. I don't know how they'll work that, but the actual, how the prize pools will be made up is the final kind of detail that I need to see for that.
Just to say, Quinny, that I was reading through the feedback ideas because I also want to see what people were saying about these things as well. And just on your point there. So Dan's replied to somebody in here, so let me find it. Where's it gone?
I seen Dan also said on the Discord that more divisions are coming, and
yeah,
this is
that's
just the
basically
beginning.
what he said. So what he said is, thanks for the feedback. We will introduce other competitions that are even better stepping stones than Underdog has been. Likewise, there will be a number of variations of the cap mode model. Cap mode 240 is just start. So obviously you were talking there about like obviously Underdog, you could win like somebody in a higher scarcity and stuff, but it sounds like what they're going to do is this is just to address what was happening with the threshold, and then there will be other types of tournaments where they'll try and assist people to then step up to the higher scarcity. So if they do what they're doing today, plus they add in some of those tournaments like after Christmas or around about the first quarter or whatever, based on the feedback, then I think that's all really positive.
Yeah, that sounds good.
And I think the Limited was probably my biggest. I think the Super Rare and the Limited both kind of surprised me in equal measure, like both you guys have been saying. But I don't think it can be underestimated how powerful that Limited one is going to be. Like, you know, like if you think about anyone who does spend time on football, like watching it, giving a crap about it enough to maybe be interested in a game like this, but able to like get a team of like, you know, imagine Hendo was here and we're talking about Dunfermline or something. You know, imagine you could build a, you know, like the team you support. Maybe they're in the Championship, maybe they're the Premier League, if we get that as well, at limited level, and you can play them 38 game weeks.
Yeah.
You know, in 38 game weeks of the season, you know, you're in for a wee Brucey bonus of a fiver, maybe a card as well. That's much better than like anything that's like comparable, in my opinion, for the even like that kind of passive armchair experience that limiteds are meant to be for.
It's like small. It's kind of like the idea that you might have small wins, but like you're always going to gain something, but you're not like, it's not like when you're putting on an accumulator where you put on 10 or 20 quid and you know that the next weekend you're going back into your pocket to put on 10 or 20 quid. Like if you're doing limited and you get to the weekend and you say, right, I'm going to add in a guy worth 20 quid, then you know that the next weekend and the next weekend or the next midweek that you're going to be able to actually use that guy to try and win your $5 or whatever. So like, and I think that will encourage people to build their galleries. And Stish, you were saying earlier about the fact you've got all these cards and you think that they're going to be useful now. Well, if that's the thought that Sorare have created, then they've really nailed it, because you've got all these cards and you think you're going to have some use for them, then you're not going to be wanting to sell them or get rid of your gallery or dump them in the market or whatever. You're just going to find a use for them. So that will kind of help the value of the cards and stuff as well, because there's value range for the different ones. The ones that will really struggle just be guys with pretty small galleries or rares that were just kind of aiming to hit the 205, maybe 5, 6, 7 rares or whatever, and just trying to hit that regularly. And obviously those cards are not going to be that valuable now as well, but they will have some use in the new form. They just won't hold the same value. So they'll probably feel pretty hard done by, but if they've been playing since Sorare gave the update, they've probably returned like 100% or something of what they've put in. So, you know, it's like, do you really want people who are passive, or do you want people that want to play and want to try and have a bit of skill in finding somebody that's going to play better than their average or whatever? So it's interesting.
I think another really interesting bit of feedback or like response that I saw was actually when I dropped in on Quinny's live stream as the reaction. There were people in the chat saying, "Oh, you know, like I came into this on basketball. Now, you know, I'm looking at football now because they basically, you know, they get a similar experience to what they get in basketball, but they've got that extra Ethereum like there that they could potentially win." And a lot of people I know that came into this through crypto, maybe like more of the American people I know, when basketball was launched, they all kind of flocked onto the platform and they were asking me, when's ETH come into basketball? And I'm like, I don't think it will. Like they wouldn't add it. I'd be very surprised if they did. I said, if anything, I'd expect it to be phased out of football rather than the other way around, like introduced into baseball and basketball. But there were people in the chat on Quinny's stream from basketball saying, I'm getting involved in football now.
Yeah.
So it'll be really interesting to see if we do get like a new influx of managers who maybe are now new to the product via basketball, and maybe not quite as much so MLB, but basketball I felt like had a really positive, good, and almost like a separate trajectory from football. There's a completely different user base there. There's different people on the content sphere. There's different kind of influencers involved in bringing people to the platform than there was on the football, and be really interesting now for those people who are following Sorare as like a product or a platform, seeing this announcement and thinking this might be a good time to buy a few football cards. I'd love to see some stats from Sorare data to see if there was any sort of like unusual activity in the market after that. I would definitely have expected a few super rare goalkeeper sales around 3 p.m. UK
sold
time
a
today.
38-year-old super rare. Jose
Did
Serrano, the guy who used to play for Feyenoord. No, Feyenoord, Fenerbahce. He moved back to Argentina. He was a previous good scorer, but never. I don't think I've had a single offer for him since I won him, and he sold today for 95 quid. So it does. Like, I mean, sometimes you get a wee bounce after these announcements, and then it fades out a bit. But like right just now, we are just getting towards the end of the World Cup, but it's a weird spell because like the Bundesliga in Germany's not back to the end of January, and different leagues are coming back at different times. Like Championship's back this weekend, EPL's not till Boxing Day, Scottish League's back next week, so everything's all filtering back. But then you've got like obviously European leagues that are on their winter break and stuff anyway. So it's been a really weird season for the World Cup because you've this big huge gap where it's just international football, and Sorare never really does well under any international breaks or even when it was the Euros or whatever. But at least when Euros was on before, you had like Asia and things like that running. Whereas this time it's been like slim pickings, like a couple of Chinese games and some second division La Liga 2 games or whatever. And it's just been like the World Cup or the Global Cup, which has been excellent. It's been really good bit of engagement. SO5's been third. Really difficult. So yeah, it is interesting. But I think that there's been a good spike today, like with people saying they sold super rare goalkeepers and the younger super rare goalkeepers, like 23s ones. I think a lot of them have sold, but their prices have all
people going for that DNP approach?
Yeah. So it's definitely
there's definitely a DNP approach there, isn't there? Because if you are playing, the another of the beauties here without it being specialist is there is the potential for you to pick up a DMP super rare goalkeeper and just take that as a 0 and then spread the scores bigger over the other 4 and still meet that 250 potentially.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good move. I think it's positive all round. And yeah, I'll be really intrigued to see how many people hit these thresholds as well. Seeing the stats on that versus the old stats of like the 25 and 50 and rare for 205 and 250.
Yeah, they said they'll keep it under review.
Be interesting to see.
So like they might get to next summer and think it's not generous enough, or maybe the cap goes up a wee bit, or like they've got to run it for a few months and see what the effect is, or whether it's actually engaging people, or whether they like it, or then they can tweak it.
Yeah.
So
I think that the feedback or the initial sort of reaction to it was pretty positive. I was expecting Royal Rumble to kick off on Twitter after the announcement went, but everyone seemed pretty happy with it. I didn't see too much negativity. Did you see much of it? Either of you?
No. I was kind of like the same as you, Stish, earlier when you were describing it. Like I was reading it at first thinking, right, where's the bad bit? Right, what way? What's happening? Are they adding some sort of, whatever. But so yeah, it was weird because it was like everyone was kind of like, everyone is quite overall happy with it, I suppose. There is some obviously newer accounts that have maybe had a very specific route to goal that they've been chasing that's now, disrupted, which, there's no getting away from that. It is what it is, unfortunately. But yeah, I didn't really see anything. It was just all the kind of the stuff, obviously, with Nick today, being pictured with the president of France. That's him. Nick's went full Illuminati now. He's in there with all the leaders of the world. He's out there calling the shots.
That's
getting the scouting team.
Yeah. I think people thought maybe it was going to be phased out, or they might say we're going to do this, but it's only for a certain amount of time, or I don't think anybody realistically thought they were going to say let's just extend it for another year in the current form. So I think because they kept it and then they added in the other scarcities and stuff, people seen that as a positive, even though it's maybe marginally, well, more than marginally worse than what it is for rare users just now. I think it's kind of more along the lines of what actually should be. I mean, they've been stuck with the threshold in terms of how it actually happened. But I don't know if you remember, Quinny, but they only ever brought it in because they were running out of cards. So they only had rares and they were aiming to
Oh
pay out
yeah.
30%. And the problem is user base started going up and they're like, hang on, we can't pay out 30%. So we used to have 500 people in the global and now we've got 2,000 people in the global or whatever. And they brought it in and it was supposed to be like 0.0001 or 0.001 and 002 or something. And everybody went, that's rubbish. And they reacted within a day or two and said, no, we're going to give you more. And then obviously F went up as well. So it was only intended to be a couple of quid or whatever. And like ended up going from a couple of quid to 20, 30, 40 quid in our terms within like obviously a space of months. And so it was never really, it was designed as something that come in that they were trying to solve another problem and it's ended up staying obviously all this time. But this seems a better kind of evolution of what's going to happen rather than people expecting that they're just going to say, well, right, it's there until the end of the season, then you've got hee-haw, that type of thing.
Yeah.
I think
that's another unintended consequence that happens with these things as well, is if you are going to quietly build up a little ETH balance, if you wake up one morning and, you know, it's I feel horrible saying this out loud because it just sounds so, so, you know, terrible, but like, if ETH doubles, you know I mean? Like, you might wake up one morning and that might happen. Like, that is, it's not a wild stretch of the imagination. Then you'll be rubbing your hands and you've got a wee ETH balance there that's been accruing up thanks to your wee 240 points from your £5 unlimited and whatever you've been up to, you know.
To touch on that point, actually, it's another thing that a lot of people were kind of preempting this announcement to be was like a move away from Ethereum to fiat for everything. So for me personally, you know, I came into this off the back of having some crypto, whereas a lot of other people, I think, especially the newer users, have come into this from FPL fantasy, and it just so happens it's built on blockchain. But the more and more I see people posting that, the more I think I'm not 100% sure. I know we use ramp and stuff like that to like convert crypto from straight from the bank. You don't need to go via an exchange, all that kind of stuff. So I guess you could hide it, but I don't think there's a way around Ethereum being used because we use the network to prove the scarcity. All of the cards are technically NFTs, and I don't see a way of it apart from hiding the Ethereum in the background. But I'm sure that would just cause a whole new problem for Sorare as a platform for people that are like, hey, hold on a minute. When I put that 500 quid in last year, that was worth 2 ETH. You know, I should have 2 ETH now, but apparently, like when I go to cash out, I've only got 0.07. It's like a reverse of the problem that some people see now is like, oh, but they only see it as a problem because ETH's been going down. If it went the other way, they'd be like, where's my ETH? Give me the ETH back. Like, I want my pounds. Like, so I think, I don't know about either of you, but I just can't see a way, like a clean cut away from Ethereum, because I think it has to be involved in it some way, shape or form, because it is built on crypto. But I get like the volatility side of it, but I think the negativity comes because of the negative price action in the market more so than, oh, I don't want to hold crypto, it's too volatile. They want to hold it when it's going up. I'm pretty sure of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can't really win with that one.
It's all it's pegged now, so that they just said $50 and $100 today. There's no mention of Ethereum there, even though it's known as the F threshold, like realistically. And also when they put the update on the site recently and you see the cards, you go to bid and it's got the last 5 sales. Well, mine's are all in pounds. That's probably because it's my preferred currency. But like, obviously, if you want to change your preferred currency in game, I think it might still show it as F, but mine shows as pounds. So people are still thinking in terms of that. And obviously, if you're going on to auction and you're buying with your credit or your debit card, then most cards don't even charge you even a small fee for that either. So you can go on and you spend your 100 quid or whatever, and then you know that some game weeks you can win like 4 quid or whatever, and you can just use that to reinvest. And some people are like, for their fun money or whatever, are not really too bothered about that, and then they'll deal with that when they're coming to cash out later on, by which point Obviously, Ramp's got like an off ramp and everything that they're trying to roll out just now, and things should be a lot better. I think with the taking the small amounts out, and Sorare lets you take out ETH and don't charge you any withdrawal fee at all now. So you take out a tenner, you get your tenner of Ethereum into Coinbase or whatever, and then you pay a small fee there, but you're not having to pay a fee for every transfer like you used to do in ETH. So it's definitely is a lot better now. Definitely.
It's all
I
very
think that ramp
positive.
system is kind of it's kind of the solution to what you're talking about, Stish. 'Cause I do think they want to hide ETH in the background and all that. And when you read that thread that McBride's talking about, where Ramp came out, I think it was today, might have been
I
yesterday,
see it, yeah.
talking about the off ramp thing. Yeah, when you read into their thread and how they're doing their stuff, like they could facilitate a market that is ran on ETH as we know it, but to the UX, to the visual, it would just be whatever your denomination you fancy, yens, euros, dollars, pounds, whatever. And I don't know if that's entirely the direction they want to go in, because I think, like I said this in the stream about the announcement today, but I think this is a big statement of intent from the company in terms of what they're about, what their game's about, and what they want the experience for managers starting on like a journey to be about. So I think a lot of these things that we're seeing now they're getting like re-etched back into tablet, because for the last year, as like both you as well kind of mentioned already, throughout this year waiting for this announcement, it's always been quite ambiguous, and it's all been quite, they're here till the end of the year, and it's always like, talk to you tomorrow, like there's not been much said, but this is quite a straight down the line, like this is what we're going to do, this is why, this is how, etc. So I think a lot of these things are now like that. These are so rare, like pillars is the way I kind of look at them now.
I think see with the MLB and the NBA, somebody made a great point the other day. It's called Sorare MLB and it's called Sorare NBA. So I think the reason they didn't put the F in wasn't because they didn't want to put the F in, but if they start putting in money or crypto to that, then in American terms, that moves them even closer towards gambling. So obviously, like if you're putting your cards up as fantasy and you win that card still has value. So I wouldn't really necessarily agree with that, but obviously in terms of regulation on people's minds, like people might think, well, if you can win something of monetary value, then it's closer to or should be regarded as gambling. So I was always thinking when they brought out NBA or MLB, I was thinking, like Stish was saying, are they going to phase out F from football, and is that going to be really difficult to do? Because obviously we've been brought up on that for like podiums and obviously for the threshold and stuff as well. But the fact that they've committed to that and they say this is what we're going to do, this is how we can see that working, I think was a kind of clear vision, and also I just like the way they've actually done it rather than targeting it at the bottom cards and saying we're going to try and kind of underpin the value so the value goes up. They were saying no, you're going to have good cards. We want you to be able to compete and like win when you've got good scores, rather than just saying we think all cards should have value. And a lot of the rare cards that were selling for 150 quid or whatever under the previous sort of regime probably won't sell for 150 quid or whatever, but should they really have ever been that price if they're only averaging like 6-7 points more than what you get for starting the game? Like, it's no good. So, maybe then when the prices come down a wee bit, it'll help people move between the scarcities, because if they can pick up a guy for 20 quid who's also rare, but actually maybe the guy's been injured or he's hit bad form or he's had a move and he's maybe going to be moving back to another league or move to a better league in terms of scoring, then they can actually find themselves with a rare team that they can try and compete for the higher rare threshold and stuff. So it's kind of a nice gap between the scarcities, because just because a card's a rare doesn't mean it should be worth more than a limited. Like, you've got to have some demand for it. So in terms of scoring or like a player that people know and stuff. So it could be quite interesting, but it will probably shake up at the bottom end of the market a wee bit in terms of some people's existing galleries. So maybe not so good for some users as well, which I do sympathise with, but it's going to have to get...
Thinking about the effect that this new sort of game mode might have on gameplay and tactics, is there anything that jumps out to you? Because the one thing that stuck in my head was the effect that this is going to have on maybe the prices of injured players who are not out for long. Like or are out for long, actually, because if they've got a DMP and they're as their L15 and we know they're coming back, like for a good example, Florian Wirtz, who will probably come back shortly after the restart of the Bundesliga campaign.
Yeah.
If we know for the week he's going to be involved, you can use him in this threshold and potentially have a 0 score that's going to bang a 60, 70 plus. That card is going to instantly have like an extra bit of spice on its value for that particular game week, right?
Yeah.
And I think that with that in mind, you Sorare need to consider putting DMP cards back in the prize pools, because if we're talking a Wirtz, or if we're talking a Chiesa or someone like that who wouldn't under the current circumstances be in a prize pool, now winning a Wirtz or a Chiesa the week before they come back from injury would be an absolutely amazing pool, not just because the caliber of player that they are, but how useful they'll be in that game week that they come back. Do you think that we should be looking at reintroducing those top tier DMP cards into the prize pools?
I don't think they should ever have been out. Like you just
I mean,
market values
value,
them.
right? If they're valuable.
Yeah, I mean, people are obviously. If you say you only have like 5 rares or whatever, and you win a rare, and you get a guy who's a DNP, then naturally you're going to be a wee bit sort of bummed about that, because all right, you've got them in the right value range, but you can't use them straight away. But the market has reacted to value. So if you won a Wirtz 2 or 3 months ago or whatever, then the market's already factored in that you're not going to get any utility out of him. So by the time he does come back, he's going to be worth more. So he's still a brilliant reward. It's just that how you use them is going to be different from how you use somebody that you could have used to improve your team and stuff like that. But I think in terms of rewarding DMPs, you probably should be rewarding more of the high value DMPs than the lower ones, because high value DMPs tend to be the kind of star guys who have got names and have demand for them, even though they're actually injured. Whereas guys at the bottom end, like if they get injured, then there's zero demand.
No one even knows.
There's no demand whatsoever. There's no use for them, or and if you put DMPs in as well, it stops people like complaining about anomalies. Like, I've got this guy and he's not supposed to be a DMP and he is, and just like we're but we're just going to base it on what the actual market values those players are. And remember they did the tournament where they had the DMPs in it, and it was like the end of the season, and they had like Infinity reward, and like there was loads of really, really good players that they were able to reward, and it was dead popular as well.
My friend finished first in Underdog that week, and he won a Pedri.
Nice.
It's like I think it was worth about 5 times what his gallery was worth at the time.
Yeah, that just shows you, doesn't it? And like, I mean, obviously, like there was a point I remember where like, I think Haaland got injured or something, and like he ended up out of the prize pools for say 5 or 6 weeks. That's a huge hit on the prize pools, like in terms of the 23s, because that's who everybody wanted to win, really, So it would be worth like 15,000-20,000 at that point. So that was a bit of a miss, I think, because there's nobody in their right mind that wouldn't have been wanting to win a Haaland for getting on the podium, or an Mbappe if it was out for 2 months or whatever. Like, so yeah, I mean, just try and base it on value. And then there was also a point like where there was loads of really, really high, like under 23 goalkeepers, like selling for like £1,000 and stuff. Guys like Mantle at Salzburg and Mamardashvili got in, but before he got in, he was still 600-700 quid. And you're thinking, these guys are brilliant tier ones to win, but you can't put them in the pools because of the current rules. So it would be interesting to get them back in. I think it's kind of like you're going to get that 1 week spike, aren't you? Because obviously if Wirtz comes in and does a 70, then all of a sudden his last 15 70 because they disregard the DNP.
You get 1 week, that's how you get it. The 1 week out of him. I see it when Chiesa came back recently, because he come off the bench. He played the last 2 or 3 games before the World Cup. And he went from a DMP L15 to like a 25. And I was looking at him I think I did put him in a specialist. He come off the bench and got an assist. So now his L15 is probably quite high.
Yeah.
He's the same.
I can see why they've done that, because then like if it's a really good star player, then to get that last 15 back above 60 again, then you're going to have to wait like 2 or 3 months or whatever. So then you've just got a guy that's just going to be like a cheat code for these tournaments for like 8 or 9 game weeks or whatever. So sometimes you look at that and it doesn't make much sense. But I think if you're doing capped game modes, then it probably does make more sense.
Yeah, it's not a bad shout at all.
Can't afford a rare at the moment.
Works is about what, 3.5 maybe? I'd hazard a guess at about 3.5 to 4 ETH. 2.
Nah, two.
Wow, I was going off of the price of Musiala.
The other problem with Verts is that Opta have gotten back to a mid during his injury. So he used to be a forward and now he's a mid, and the mid card I think is worse in terms of scoring. There's obviously still a card, but it's not as good in terms of scoring.
I just noticed that, yeah, you're right. He is back. Yeah, his new mints are midfielder again. Yeah. But someone bought a forward this week for the same price as recent sales of the mid.
Yeah,
I've got the mid. I've got the original Florian Wirtz card. But I would like a forward one.
These limited ones, like obviously if you're sitting right at the bottom of the market with 2%, again, it's that point about the older cards. Like if you were going to buy that for a single game week to run in a threshold, which obviously a limited threshold, you're not going to spend £283.98 to win $5. But obviously if you were thinking of having a card like that for that type of capped tournament, you wouldn't be bothered about the 2%. Whereas now I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, where's these current season cards? Because I don't want the old card with 2%. Yeah. So, and obviously going forward, they've said that for foreseeable, we're not going to put in the 5% market tax. It's going to come at some point. So if they can refine how they give value to older cards, then maybe at some point when they say they're bringing in the 5% tax, they can say bringing in the 5% tax, but we're going to increase the threshold or whatever to counteract it, and then they can keep the value of the cards up by increasing the threshold, but then tax the market and make money off of the tax.
I definitely would hope it would be nowhere near 5% on football. Personally, I hope so. So I think there was a wee murmur and a wee whisper that the basketball being 5% is partly down to maybe NBA or getting a cut of that or something. So there's a wee kind of whisper of a chat around maybe that's part of the makeup of that.
I think if it was 5%, if it kind of declines as you go up, like you imagine you finally get that big value card or whatever, and then you're getting told you need to spend £250 to sell it or whatever. Like if there was a wee bit of a sliding scale where it was like 5% at the start, but the more expensive ones came down a wee bit, I think that'd be easier to stomach as well.
Definitely much easier to swallow that pill. But I think, see with like DNP cards and rewards and whatever, I always think auctions is a good place to maybe try and get some of these cards out. But I think auctions now are quite slow. And McBride, you were making headlines on Twitter the other day, bringing out the Ferran Torres unique price. It went for two and a half grand or so, wasn't it? What was it in ETH?
It went for
Ferran Torres unique.
It was like 2.6 ETH or something. It was ridiculously low.
Oh wow.
Hugely low. I mean, I was like, couldn't believe how low it was, that type of low. But also, it's when these high prices were obviously been bandied about, people had loads of money in crypto or in a kind of bull market where they'd maybe put 5 or 6, 7,000, 8, 10,000 pounds into Ethereum, and Ethereum had gone from £300 to £5,000, or like they had money, whereas Ferran Torres going for just under £3,000. Like, but somebody's got to if you don't have a balance, you've got to find £3,000 to spend on that guy, and he's a guy obviously who's not guaranteed to start for Barcelona or anything either. So it is pretty interesting, but you just think that's just so low. But it's symptomatic of what was happening with the super rare market and uniques as well, because there's no real use for a lot of the cards, and that's where obviously they've been quite clever with this threshold, because obviously unique threshold's the highest threshold of all of them, and some guys there will be thinking, well, it's worth spending a few £1,000s or whatever because I know I'm going to get quite a regular return on that money. So it's almost, well, at that level it probably is more like investment because of the amounts of money you're dealing with. There's not many fun level players up there unless they've just got huge amounts of money and just, they still want to win more money or want to win things that get value, so it's like it's more important up there as well. I feel because of spending thousands of pounds on every single card. So yeah,
I've just had a look at the recent sales. So I see your Ferran Torres down there. Do you want to hazard a guess at how much? Okay, Sergio Busquets also went this week for 1.65 ETH. This one amazes me, given we know that they're collectible on the platform as it is, and currently quite an important player for England at the World Cup. But Jordan Henderson, unique card, 0.88 ETH. That's you pay more than that for like a rare of a lot of players of a similar caliber on the game.
he's got Liverpool cards, so
yeah, that's wild. But there are quite a lot of sales have gone under 2 ETH. Morata just over an ETH today or yesterday. Sorry, Alvaro Morata. I mean, not my favourite player, but that seems low for a player of international caliber.
Yeah.
There's some surprising ones there. I mean, Gouiri 7.5. I mean, that's a lot
Still
more.
7.5 I would have bought him.
Aye.
I guess this goes.
We love Gouiri, don't we, McBride?
Messi of 35 not that long ago felt low, didn't it? Compared to what we've seen some cards go for in recent years. But I guess this is second
somebody
unique.
bought him as well. I think Gerard Duke, I don't know how much he paid, but he's sold on already.
Really?
Yeah. He's whoever bought him, I'm going to look that up actually and see if it records what it was. But he's been moved on to Gerard Duke. Because I was looking the other day and I was like, that's not who bought that in the first place, eh?
Oh yeah, look, they are. So they bought it for 35.58 Bellamar, and then sold it for 38 to JR Duke the next day.
Yeah, we flip.
Actually,
up.
the next day.
Yeah.
So made a quick buck.
Small profit.
2.5 ETH profit. Not bad.
Bad for a day's work.
Not bad.
That's not bad at all.
Not bad at all.
Yeah, I mean he's come down a lot.
Yeah, I bought a gold
unique from last year, but hasn't he? Like he was like unique last year was over 200,000 and double the amount of ETH as well. So he's not even as if he's sold for the same amount of ETH or anything. If you want to argue that people are ETH valuers, he's playing better this year. His scores are better, maybe a wee bit shorter on his career. So maybe it's to do with the kind of utility he's got left rather than just the collectability and stuff as well. But so it seems wee bit low, but it's still a fantastic amount of money for a card like that. Like that.
A quick flip.
So
on the subject of uniques, real quick as well, McBride, do you play Division 1? Do you play unique division?
No,
yourself?
I've only got one unique, and it's kind of before venturing that way, been trying to make sure that I've got like good under 23s and all-star like super rare entrants, because obviously with super rares you might think you don't need so many of them, but if you're playing pros then you're going to need 2 super rares per pro, plus at the moment some of them are out of use because Russia's not on and all that stuff and the MLS is not on. So as you said with the NBA thing, you end up needing more than you actually think. So I've always been tempted to buy the uniques and stuff recently, but I was kind of just buying Celtic cards for like so just buy loads of Celtic cards. It's just like, but it's like I want a super rare Celtic stack, and actually when they came out, I thought I'm never going to have a super rare Celtic stack because they're going for 5, 6, 7,000 each and all that sort of stuff, and they were never auctioning a Joe Hart super rare, and then just kind of get into a range where it was just like, yeah, I can actually make that happen without going too daft, and yeah, kind of nearly got it.
Well, jealous.
Aye.
Will we tell everyone, McBride, what you managed to achieve this morning?
Yeah.
Talking about Celtic cards.
Yes.
Will we tell everyone? Will we keep it a secret?
They'll see it in my collection anyway. Matt O'Reilly has.
This doesn't have a clue.
Big Matt O'Reilly, handsome bugger that he is, and overall shite scorer. Don't buy him. I'll not be buying any more of him at all. So don't bother. Super rare's worth nothing. But yeah, Matt O'Reilly's finally after 4 months got a card. So for a 1 out of 1,000, 109 quid. Like, you know, That's pretty good. And that was only because my brother actually rang me up as well. So I told him last night, I said, don't tell anybody else. They came on at 10 o'clock this morning and started outbidding me. So he's dead. But that's it's nice to see him having a card, because like with Celtic stacks and stuff and McGregor being out, like it's kind of destroyed the stacks, because Hatati's a lovely player, but it doesn't really score that high. And with no McGregor, there's like hardly any viable Celtic midfielder cards and stuff like that. But actually, I think having O'Reilly and stuff on the platform might kind of reinvigorate stacks a wee bit as well, because you all of a sudden you will be able to put out a pretty good team without having to put somebody in from an R team and stuff. But that's the cat's out the bag now. So if you see Sean 10, McBee 88 bidding and Matt O'Reilly, please outbid him. You dick.
Outbid him.
Couldn't believe it.
I was saying to Stish as well, like you see what you're saying there with stacking up on super rare, like Celtic cards and stuff like that. Like I've been like this whole like kind of year, I've been moving my gallery towards like getting better cards and moving up like the scarcities and stuff like that. And that was one of the main things that I really liked about that super rare part of the announcement as well, is it does give merit to like that top part of the food chain, as it were, you know, where like, and the reason I brought up the Ferran Torres thing is because like the auction house is like, you know, like it's not that ferocious now, even though it's like good sentiment and everyone's kind of buzzing, but there's not that many different people in the auctions, you know, in terms of variety of players, and there's that, you know, so not a lot of players are going to get high issuance, I don't think, this year, because there is so many football players now. And you know, so we're talking about the value of picking up DNP from rewards, but if you get some because some DNPs, like Aidan McGeady, for example, has got like 9 cards, so like you do get little batches where the DNPs do get released. So even if you can even identify, because you don't get to choose your rewards obviously, but if you can identify a DNP guy and you catch out when they've got an auction or something, like you've got your alerts set and you've got your favourites selected and you check it, like McBride does with Matt O'Reilly Limited, that he doesn't tell anyone about until he completed the auction.
I told you last night. Do you know what happened though? It was a weird one. I had one of the young guys at PSG on my shortlist, so I went on, and first thing I do is favourite, you know, go to favourites so that I'm filtering out all the rubbish. And then I seen a guy, the 1 out of 1,000 for PSG. It just kept putting my mind. It's like, you know, maybe they're kind of putting some new faces in. They've not told anybody. And weirdly, I went to Celtic and I went to check Matt O'Reilly, and his card was sitting there, and it was just by pure chance, and it was due to go through the next day, and there wasn't much action on it. So I'm just going to bump it up to 50 quid, and then we know what happened earlier, so we're not going to mention that again. But it's still a really good price for a guy who's that age and got some really good sort of peak scores and stuff as well. Plus he's been playing every week as well, even though Celtic have been rotating a bit and stuff. But there was a load today, like Nasir Navar got his first card, you know, the boy from my ex that's on loan at Trabzonspor, so he's obviously really highly rated, although he's not been playing in loan, so you get a card. And they added in some other guys as well, so there was a few new ones. What was it? I think Kabak. Can't remember all the different ones, but there was, when I filtered it.
I noticed somebody with a new picture of the day as well. I can't remember who it was, but it was quite a surprising one. It was, sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, no, I use either of you use the website? There's one called Sorare Base, where you can kind of see what the new mints and any one change in position is.
Oh, I didn't know they had that.
Sorare Base. If you go onto sorarebase.football and then go to news and then go to new players, and it shows you like players that are being minted soon, or you can also see players. If you go to like news and go to new position, it shows you cards who have like recently like started changing. It's quite handy, yeah. I'll pop in there every now and then to see if I've missed something. But if you have a look on there, you can see that quite a lot of the sort of the Sporting Lisbon, a lot of the sort of youth players got cards recently and stuff like that. So it's nice for that. Where if you're following youngsters particularly, makes me sound like a pedo. But following youngsters on the platform. As I do, I like to follow a lot of players who don't have cards. You know, I'm digging that hole, man. I may as well keep going. But I follow a lot of players who don't have cards yet. So I'll pop in there and be like, oh, don't I follow that person? And then sometimes you go and you're like, oh, there's that number 1 mint. And I've picked a few up like that. I picked up Patrick Wallermark, who plays at
Feyenoord.
Feyenoord, yeah, the Swedish youngster. I got his number 1 that way. He was someone I was following before they started minting him. So yeah, it's handy. There's some good little sites out there. That Sorare bases are really.
Remember they brought out the
checking out,
Thiago
like,
Almada cards for Vélez, and they launched them. It was like a Monday afternoon or something like that, and I ended up buying 2. It was like 50 quid, so that's really good. And what happened was nobody realised he was there, and by 5 o'clock he was 125. So it's just people hadn't actually noticed he was being auctioned because they hadn't said it's new faces or anything. They just managed to get his card on. Something happened before and he didn't have a card or whatever. He didn't come out at the same time as Vélez, and the other sort of Vélez cards, because he was still in Argentina at the point, hadn't moved to Atlanta, sorry, not Atlanta. But it's quite interesting. I kind of like that they do that as well, because like it kind of encourages you to look in the market and sort of check if people are being auctioned and stuff, so it keeps you more active rather than thinking, oh, I'm not going to bother, because sometimes you get tempted in, you see somebody and you end up like making a bid for somebody else, which is always dangerous when you've got a balance. But anyway, there's a reason why I've got so many cards, so let's move on.
I think probably the last thing to touch on from all this is, coming into the weekend, we've got the quarterfinals of the World Cup. The Global Cup is we're almost finished with it. There's only 3 more match days left to go. We've got the quarters, the semis, and then the third place in the final, obviously, in match day 7. Are you excited for the quarterfinals? We picked our team. We done an extra draft. What are you thinking for the weekend?
I made a point of not putting any French players in my team. There's 2 reasons for that. One, I cannot. I don't want any. No, don't need any more good luck omen. None of that. I can't bring myself to do it. It would feel dirty, so I didn't. But I had a bit of luck. Obviously, I think I mentioned on a podcast last week that I drafted in Ziyech.
Yes,
I've been quite vocal about not fancying Spain through this tournament, and I managed to keep hold of Ziyech through the draft. Being really impressed with Morocco again. I think I've got a few options, but I do think as well now, because my tournament's been so poor, that actually not playing the French players that a lot of people, especially you Scots, have probably got like French stacks and stuff going on. I think not playing the French, like the Mbappes and that, if you're going to have any chance of getting anywhere near anything, you need to be going a bit different and hoping that your picks come good, because a lot of people are going to have the Brazil, the Argentina, the France stacks, and I've decided I've stuck with my Brazilian back 2 of Alisson and Marquinhos, and up front I've brought in Jude Bellingham. I've got Bellingham. I've got
nice.
I've got Bellingham, and then I've got Enzo and Alvarez. That's my team for the next round. Yeah, had to mix
Kane?
up my Argentinians. No who? No Kane.
No Kane?
No, I couldn't really afford to bring him in because I was desperately in need of like defensive options. So I had to go heavy on the defenders in the last draft just to make sure I had options. But I can give or take the Global Cup now. I'm not getting anywhere near any of the cool prizes, so I'm purely in there for banter now, and that is why I'm not selecting any French players, banter or no banter. It's not happening this weekend. It's Mbappe. It's not Mbappe. It's not going to be Mbappe's game this Saturday. If I've got anything to do with it, that like -1 selection on his Global Cup might be the straw that breaks Mbappe's back before the game kicks off with a bit of luck. What about you two? What's your tactical outlook for the weekend?
Today, I feel French. No, it's up top. I've got Mbappe, Messi, and Neymar. So I had Neymar in at the start of the tournament. So the only wee advantage there is he's on like 3.5% XP. So if you end up in a stack, then that's not too bad. I think Brazil have got probably the easiest of the draws. What I think with France and England is France are pretty good at the back. England have been playing pretty well, but I thought first half against Senegal that they get a bit of joy, and you're just thinking there, if you're playing against a right good team, you would have probably have got punished in terms of that. So I think England and France might be a game where, unless Mbappe explodes into 2 goals or something, you might not get very many high scores. So, like, I've just kind of gone majority Brazil, and it's kind of choice between what am I doing? Am I putting in Messi or putting in Mbappe? The other thing is, well, you kind of inclined to go with differentials and stuff, but you're getting to the stage of the tournament where you might just get one result that actually just dominates the results. You know, you might get a couple of penalty shootouts and somebody that's won 2-0 or something, and then that just dominates it. And obviously, you're getting quite deep in terms of benches and stuff. So if we play like Mbappe and then Messi does an 80 or whatever, then that might be the tiebreaker. So I'm just going for majority of Brazil, just because I think like the one of the strongest teams in the tournament. I think that playing against Croatia are a good team, but it's about as good a draw that you could reasonably expect to get at this point in the tournament. Morocco obviously are still in, and they've been playing really, really well defensively. So anybody playing against them is probably going to struggle to break them down. So if you look at the Morocco-Spain game, the scores up until like extra time or whatever were nothing that was going to win anything in the Global Cup. So I think you've got to try and at this point predict who's going to have that kind of dominant result. And Brazil were brilliant against South Korea. They were just buzzing. In the second half, they were just like, oh, we're winning 4-0 and there's no impetus or whatever, but you can see them just coming out flying against Croatia. So you never know. Somebody could win one of those other games in a dominant way, hopefully France. But yeah, I think that's the strategy you've got to go for. And obviously, if you're still in the overall running, you've got to take a strategy of who do you think's going to get quite far, or how you're going to draft and all that type of stuff. But if you're just going for a one-off game week or whatever, then I just have a flyer at it. Like, you know, if you want to pick some differentials and stuff, you're out the cup. Why not pick guys who normally don't get picked? You know, like Ziyech, like quite capable of doing an 80 or a 90 or whatever. Like, so Hakimi's been brilliant this tournament, guys like that. So
yeah.
I actually backed Portugal quite heavy. I won a Diego Costa common as a tier 2 or something, or maybe a tier 1, but I think it was a tier 2. And that kind of defaulted me. I went and I got a Cancelo. I reckon he'll start this game. And I went with Bernardo Silva because, again, similar to Stish, I cannot, Bruno Fernandes is probably the better pick, but I can't pick a Man United player. So I picked Bernardo Silva because it should be kind of the same, and it's a wee bit of a differential as well. And then up front, Captain Griezmann, along with Stish's pal Richie. He plays for a wee team called Tottenham. Big Richie in Brazil. So I've got him up front with Griezmann. So
Richard.
I'm going Portugal stack with some firepower.
You know what I was laughing at? England saying they had a plan for Mbappe. It's like a plan for Mbappe.
Yeah.
Have you even watched Mbappe at this tournament? Like it's good that they've got a plan for him, but I'm also thinking, really hoping in Saturday that realise you just can't really have a plan for somebody that good. Like he's just so good. Like Kyle Walker's probably one of those guys you want to play against him where actually he's got brilliant pace, so he could nullify him, but like you're just wondering whether Mbappe's clever enough to just look over and see like Harry Maguire and go, hang on a minute, that should be over.
Yeah.
You know, French are good, and obviously if Mbappe for some reason ends up getting nullified by like the pace and stuff of Walker, like you're then worrying about what's Giroud going to do, what's Griezmann going to do. Rabiot scored a few goals earlier on the tournament, so French are
Ousmane Dembele.
I mean, they're quite a good team overall. I must say, been really impressed with England. England have been excellent. Like that game against
top goal scorers in the tournament.
The young guys, Saka, Bellingham, Foden, and generally speaking as well, like as a team and stuff, they have played great. So it's going to be. I actually can't wait. I think it's going to be a brilliant game on Saturday. That's probably most exciting out of the ties, even though you get Argentina and Messi and stuff. Like everybody's just looking forward to Saturday night, really, aren't they? So it's going to be really good.
It's going to be a massive one, I think. Like even thinking back to the Euros, I remember how nervous we all were about playing the Germans in the knockout rounds, and then we turned up on that day to nick a result. And this one feels, because I think by the time we beat the Germans, we did definitely went into the final feeling like we might actually win a trophy. We might actually win. We were in with a shout here. We got the beating of Italy. I definitely didn't feel as nervous about the final as I did about the German game, and I feel similarly about this. If we do get past France, I think we can beat anyone in this tournament. I think they're as good as anything out there in terms of like what England might be able to do to them. But I think that the thing I am excited about potentially on this game versus anything else we've done or come up against in the tournament so far is I think France will come at us, and I think that us on the counter, I don't think the French defence can deal with our front 3 or 4 players that are going to be in that counter. So if they do go for us, if they come for us, if we can sort our defence out and turn a defence into attack quickly, it could be we could surprise a few people. And I think that's I think you'll be able to tell that first 5-10 minutes. If Mbappe gets sent down the wing with a nice through ball, and you think, oh, they're at it today, they're after us, they want to get an early goal. If we can counter, we can get them, I think. But I think it's either going to be the most boring game ever or the most exciting game ever. I don't think it's going to be.
Yeah,
we'll know soon. First 10 minutes, it'll either be the cagiest game or it'll be end to end like crazy. So hopefully, it's the latter, and hopefully England are on the better end of the chances, and that XG pops up, and Harry Kane will be there to head us into the next round. And I do think, I've said it. I think between France and England, whoever wins this game, would expect to go all the way to the final, and go into the final as favourites as well, because I think Brazil have looked great. Argentina have definitely improved game on game, but I think France have really impressed me when they were at their best against Poland. Mbappe against Poland was unreal for me. I thought Matty Cash had a great game, and he still scored twice. Mbappe, so you just can't. How do you deal with that? We just have to see what Mbappe and what Walker turn up on the weekend. But fingers will be crossed for England, and I'll probably have me head in my hand somewhere watching it through my fingers like that. But I'm looking forward to it. It's a massive, massive game. And fair play to Southgate. I think tactically he's been pretty good this tournament. Looks like he's learnt his lesson from that Euros final. He's made good substitutions. They all had impacts. So that's going to be another key point. If we're still in the game at 70, 80 minutes, we've got more legs than France into extra time, I think. So, we've got good quality that comes in off the bench, whereas I think France will struggle given the amount of injuries they've had. Pre-tournament, you wouldn't have fancied them. Their bench was incredible, but they're looking a little bit bare bones on the bench now, whereas I think we have some real game-changing options on the bench. So if we can stick it out and hang in there, there is always that chance as well that last 15-20 minutes we can kick on and hopefully we don't want it to go to penalties. I definitely can't deal with that again. I had enough of that. No more penalties.
That's my favourite. England did a penalty shootout. I love that. Oh, great fun to watch.
Mbappe will have had a hat trick by then. Don't be daft. Come on, let's Billy 3-0 to France.
3-0 to France.
Not having it.
I definitely think I definitely make you right, Stish. I think if England win this, I would make them favourites to go on. So I think if you can beat France, you can beat them really. But I think it is going to be it'll boil down to Mbappe versus Bellingham. Because we were talking about injuries and stuff. It's really midfield. If Bellingham, the form he's in, if he can get a few runs of play, and he could just destroy France from the middle of the pitch. With the options that England have got, but. Yeah, I hope it's not going to be boring. I hope I hope everyone has fun with the football wherever you've picked your teams and wherever you've picked your players. And so what's this, match day 5? This will be the end of the Global Cup. And then we've only got 2 more, and then we're back to game weeks. Stishy, pleasure as always, my man.
Thanks, lads. It's been an absolute pleasure.
McBride, the super sub. Thanks very much for joining us, mate.
It's been a big day, so it's good fun.
Good luck, everyone.